On today's episode, we are running down the most notable shows and episodes of 2022 based on the 135 series that we discussed. The full list can be found in the description, starting with The Cleaning Lady and concluding with Disney's Willow. Along with our best and worst picks, we will also revisit some of our original takes and see how they panned out. It's December 2022, and this is our year-end review. For those unfamiliar with this podcast, every episode one of us watches, or both of us watches, the latest installment of a different series. Then one of us is tasked with doing the background research on it, and then that results in a review that covers plot, fun facts, critical reception, and then our rating. At the industry's current pace of production, we end up analyzing a lot of pilots. Do you even know how many we did this year? Out of 135.
I would guess like 80.
95.
95?
The amount of episodes that we watch usually depends on the premiere drop, but normally fluctuates between 1 and 3. We did do a handful of full season reviews, but only like 5 or 6.
Only 5 or 6? I thought we did.
Like Zootopia, Harley Quinn, that type of stuff. Do you know by breakdown, like what network or streamer do you think that we did the most of?
The most?
Yes.
I would say Disney Plus, maybe?
Disney Plus didn't even crack the top 5.
Oh, wow.
It was 8 shows by Disney Plus. 22 from Netflix, 15 Apple, 15 HBO, 10 Hulu, 10 Prime, 9 Peacock, 8 Disney, and 18 Network, which fluctuates between ABC, CBS, NBC, CW, and then there's like a couple other. And then we did do like Sci-Fi and Spectrum, but those were like one-offs.
I think that Netflix has cracked our top like streaming, top shows that we've reviewed from it in the past.
Netflix, I think, makes the most streaming content.
Yeah, well, they've definitely been around the longest.
They've been around the longest, but they've also like accrued an international, like they'll team up with like international networks and create original content that way, which is almost cheating. But yeah, moving forward, let's just like crack into our top 5 episodes. So we broke this down with our top 5 episodes and top 5 shows, because like I stated, we've seen sometimes more than one episode per review. And so we've watched like probably more than 200 series episodes, along with the 135 shows that we've watched. So we really wanted to say these are specifically the episodes that we felt were the best of the year, and they weren't necessarily indicative of the show being good or bad, you know?
Right, yeah.
Like they stand alone.
Number 5 on my list is the Terminal List. I found this incredibly intense. I really like Taylor Kitsch acting, but I think Chris Pratt holds its own. It has the twist ending at the very end of it, and I still
at the very end of the episode.
Yes, at the very
pilot?
end of the episode. Yeah, there's like a really great sense of mystery. And
this is like he's a war veteran, right?
Right, he comes back from war,
and is this like a Hurt Locker scenario, or where he wants to go back to war?
Or no, it's the fact that like
he gets caught up in this like huge.
His team, when he was like on a beach, gets ambushed, and there is someone that was very close to him that died during the ambush.
Yes.
And then he comes back and he thinks that person is okay, but then people are telling him that like that person actually died, but he's still able to see him.
So it's like a psychological...
Almost like Fight Club. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. So that's your number 5. My number 5... Oh, are you done talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
5 Days at Memorial. So 5 is 5 Days at Memorial. This premiere felt like the first half of an apocalypse movie mixed with 3-dimensional characters. Something you don't normally see in a hospital. And this was a 2005 Category 5 hurricane, of course, Hurricane Katrina. But the way that they made the storm so threatening, and also the tension that was building, despite the doctors just going about their regular routine, you just heard the thundering and the monstrous like waves of rain hitting the sides. Like the show kind of went in a different direction after a while, but this first episode knocked it out of the park, and it deserves to be in the top 5
I remember
discussion. Yeah.
The production for it, like how they ended up making the storm.
To make it shake, to make the building shake.
Just crazy.
Yeah, even if they don't stick around for the rest of the show, watch that first episode. Number 4 for you is what?
Peaky Blinders, the finale.
Of course.
I mean, you kind of have to watch the whole show to really understand how good this finale was.
Yeah, you were a fan before we even reviewed the show. So you were aware of everything going on. Would someone who has never seen Peaky Blinders, who just watched the finale, like it as much as you did?
Oh, no, not as much. You may still enjoy it, but the thing is also season 6, this actually was a benefit for the finale. After the first 2 episodes really went downhill, episodes 3 through 5.
So you weren't a fan of the full season?
No, not the full season. I actually like the first 5 seasons. Season 6 is kind of mediocre, but this finale made it good.
And was it mostly because of Cillian Murphy, or?
Oh, Cillian Murphy does a great job in this show.
And he's coming back. The show's over, but the movies
they're
are
still gonna make the movie, yeah. But the thing is that also it just like ties up all the story arcs in such a great way, and I just feel like anyone who really enjoyed the show, you have to like this finale.
I remember there was like a gas scene in it that was really good.
Yeah, the blow
like a mustard gas type.
Oh yeah. That was just such a brutal way to kill off.
Okay, no other spoilers. Like we'll spoil a little, but not enough to if someone wants to jump in.
But that was my number 4 pick.
Got it. My number 4 one was Lost. It was also a finale. It was Lost Ollie's finale, episode 4. If you're like me and you haven't been happy with like the last few Toy Story films and you want to connect with your inner child, this is an adventure. It's a tearjerker. It's a fantasy, and it deserves more attention. I feel it was like released on Netflix and not enough people heard about it. Mm-hmm. And it only has like a 7 or something on IMDb, which is completely undeserved, especially if you watch this last episode. You should watch all 4, but like this one really captures, I think, the magic maybe of some of those like children's stories that really transcend time. And so and the CGI is great. So
throughout the whole series, but
you watched it too, and you like those stuffed animals as they ran around. Your number 3.
My number 3 pick, we reviewed, I think, like the whole season, or it feels like we did at least, Atlanta, but specifically Cancer Attack, episode 5, the episode in which Paperboy loses his phone and then they find the person that stole it, or they think they found the person that stole it. I found that episode to be just classic Atlanta, but like I thought I found all the like jokes to work. I thought the actor that played the person who stole the phone was like absolutely great, and just overall, just a perfect episode.
Socks?
No. The person who they think stole it in the plot.
Yeah, and then there's also music in that episode, which makes for a nice little...
Yeah, no, I mean, just like I said, classic Atlanta, number 3 on my list.
Would you watch that on repeat?
Yes, I could definitely repeat that viewing, yeah.
On that, okay. My number 3, this one is difficult because it's actually not even my favorite episode of this show, but it has the moment when I realized that this show was going to be one of the best shows of the year.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
It's good on Apple, so it's Pachinko.
Okay, Pachinko.
Okay, yeah. For greenlighting this because it's a time-flipping, cross-cultural Korean-Japanese period drama. You wouldn't romance. Like you wouldn't expect it to necessarily be that good. It's named off a arcade game or a casino game.
You know, I typed in like best shows for the year just in preparation for this, and Pachinko continually ended up.
But we're talking, I'm not talking about it being the best show. I'm talking about the specific episode. Episode 3 has a moment about halfway or near the end where the main character is having a conversation with sort of a secondary character, and there's just something so touching about that conversation where it just makes you forget you're watching a TV show and you're just completely committed into like what happens to these people. So that's my number 3. For you, what?
My number 2 pick was Wolf Like Me, the finale. If you remember, I said that
you really like that show too.
The finale,
Amy Adams and Josh. What's his name?
I think it's Isla Fisher.
Okay, yeah. I always
Isla
get those
Fisher
two confused.
and Josh Gad. But the thing is that the finale specifically foregoes the whole entire comedy aspect. This is just a straight up
So it's a comedy
horror.
for 5 episodes.
For 5 episodes, and then the finale is just a straight up horror, and they do it so well. I really enjoy it.
Like I don't even think they could pull that off in What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh no, absolutely
so that's
not.
that is yeah.
Yeah, I mean it was so intense. I know I said that for the
you like to use that word.
But even in here, it was that times 10. Like you were really scared about what was going to happen.
That's why it's higher up on your list.
It was like one of those independent horror movies, and there's so many of those that come out, but this one specifically is like one of the good ones where you're like, oh, I actually really enjoyed this way more than I thought I would. So number 2 on the list, just because of how original and compelling that was to take a 5-episode comedy series and then just
and it's Australian too. It's an Australian series.
Yeah, and I think it's getting renewed, and I can't wait for season 2. But the episode itself, the finale, number 2 on my list.
I just remember there's a part because I didn't watch the show, but you told me about where like Josh Gad just walks into a swimming pool, and then we used it for our tweet when we put out the show. He just like he gets so fed up with like that he just walks straight into it.
I don't think that was the finale. I think that was like episode 4 or 5.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
All right. If you're like me and you like Catch Me If You Can, then you'll love Tokyo Vice, the pilot.
Tokyo Vice, the pilot. Okay.
Yes. It's like a Walking Dead situation where it sets up the series almost too well. The potential is just out the roof when you first watch it. Ansel Elgort plays this guy who's trying to make it as a journalist in Japan, and this is in the past, where like no one is white. So like it's very strange. There's a cultural dynamic, but also it's like he gets mixed in with this like shady mob scenario, and it's all very, very, very interesting and intriguing. And the show for the rest of it is okay, but it never meets the heights of that first episode again. So, but people should watch that as like a one-off.
Oh, okay. So just watch the pilot and then nothing else.
Yes.
So number 1 on my list is one that was on your list, Lost Ollie, the finale. I found that to be incredibly touching. This was somehow able to bring in all the emotion and just all of like the thing. It's like a Pixar film. How Pixar somehow can like actually appeal to everyone. I thought that it did a great job here. And yeah, Lost Ollie, just the finale, I feel like definitely deserves the number 1 spot. Just because of all the like, it had everything. Action, humor, like comedy, but just all in the end when it comes down to it all, I found that to be a perfect episode and definitely the closest I would come to giving an episode on this list a 10 out of 10.
Hey, so we both agree on that one. I'm sorry I took one of your shows. I didn't realize I had spaced on the fact that I had done the research on that one. We're not supposed to technically use other people's. Yeah, okay.
I was a little surprised when it happened, but hey, no, it's a great.
It shows how good
episode.
It is.
Yeah.
All right. So far, I've listed off a docudrama, a children's show, a foreign drama, a crime drama. It's only fair that now my number 1 is actually ending with a comedy, and that is
comedy.
Yeah, the Afterparty episode 3, Ben Schwartz's focal episode. It's outrageous. If you're not into that type of comedy, you're gonna hate it. But the personal narration and the great ensemble cast to this specific episode.
The songs are surprisingly
There are
good.
songs. I don't want to spoil too much about the songs, but they definitely are paying homage to pop culture. And I could go back and watch that specific episode at any time. Obviously, the whole show is about this after party of this high school, like what was it called?
A reunion.
A reunion that takes place. Someone ends up dying, and they have to figure out who murdered them. So it's a whodunit in a sort of way. But yeah, those are my top 5. Let's run down them real quick again. 5 Days at Memorial, episode 1. Lost Ollie, episode 4. Pachinko, episode 3. Tokyo Vice, episode 1. And the Afterparty, episode 3.
Yours are The Terminal List, pilot, Peaky Blinders finale, Atlanta season 3, episode 5, also titled Cancer Attack. Number 2, Wolf Like Me, finale. And number 1, Lost Ollie, the finale as well.
All right, so now it's time to jump into the 5 worst episodes of the year. These were actually harder to pick for me because a lot of the time when I just don't like an episode, I don't go through the process of just hating on it, you know?
No, I agree, yeah.
So, all right, but I did the best I could here. So my number 5 is The Law and Order. When it came back, it was revived. Season 21, episode 1. I feel like there was so much potential for it to like kick it off with a really strong episode and show that it had a reason for coming back.
Right, yeah.
I feel like it was wasted potential. I feel like it was preachy. It was ham-fisted. There was political messaging. And overall, I just did not like that episode. So it's bad.
Number 5 for me was Money Heist Korea, the pilot. I understand why it was made, which I can't say for a lot of these things. They were just trying to like kind of cash in on Money Heist.
It was already a foreign Netflix show. Why did it need to be another Korean Netflix show?
I mean, it was basically just a carbon copy, but they took all the bad bits. Yeah, they took all the bad parts of it, and they decided to put it in this TV series. It was also like, I think, over an hour, which was way too long.
But I would have put this as a contestant for one of the worst shows of the actual year, not just not like the pilot episode. What specifically? I guess the pilot is the one that really shows you, oh, this isn't going to be any good.
Right, yeah. Okay. So, I mean, like in the end, when it comes down to it all, I do think that's better than the other ones that I have listed here. But yeah, I think it definitely deserves a spot on the bottom list.
All right. My number 4 is Billy the Kid, season 1, episode 7. I like to give pilots a wide berth. Like, they have pilotitis. There's a lot of exposition. There's a lot of mistakes, but this was by episode 7.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that they cast a 27-year-old to play someone who was supposed to be like 10 years younger and like who died when they were 21 and also who's like a legend in like Western past. And this whole episode, if I remember correctly, felt like it was a side plot in a Red Dead Redemption game, but where your main character is trying to be a saint. Like everything that Billy the Kid is doing is like a good thing. It's
right.
Billy the Kid.
Right, yeah. Everyone knows
it made no sense. There were plot holes. I just didn't like that episode. Number 4 on my list.
Number 4 on my list is actually episode 4 of East New York. I know that I gave it somewhat a favorable review, like a 5 out of 10.
You gave all the CBS ones somewhat favorable, like Fire Country, So Help Me Todd.
Well, I didn't watch So Help Me Todd.
But I thought that overall we talked about it.
Yeah.
And then for this one, I thought you also said was like, okay.
The more that I thought about it, the more I just could not understand why Regina Haywood, the main character of the show, had a job. She screamed at the person that was about to blow up a building to like get down when the police were about to take them out with snipers. You would lose your job in an instant. I really did not like Regina's.
I mean, every cop show has crazy stuff happening in it.
No.
You're just saying this is above and above what was like reasonable to suspend disbelief.
It's memorable in all the wrong ways.
Okay,
Regina's mom, like, they try to like bring in this cheesy message about family by the end that just does not work, and that's the reason.
It's a network drama.
This
is just the worst of the worst network dramas.
And I would bring it down to number 4. And
it's
honestly,
been renewed for 4 seasons. I'm kidding,
my rating
I think it will be renewed.
My rating would probably I'd change it to like a 3 or 4. Really not that great.
My number 3 is Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, episode 1. There's only been 1 season of it. It was called Lot 36. If you listen to that episode, you will hear my full thoughts, but in short, it's cringy. It's predictable. There's a racist main character who really doesn't do anything throughout the entire episode that makes them redeemable or even worth watching. There's plot holes, and it's really a lot of potential waste.
I'm a little surprised.
The second episode's pretty good, but the first episode, which follows kind of a similar plot, is pretty bad.
I think, like I said,
it was also written by Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, it's something that actually happened to him. I know the show itself has good reviews, but you're saying that the pilot...
I don't know if it's even called a pilot because they were all released at once, and it's really just an independent story. Go watch. Just start at the second one if you're going to watch this series.
Number 3 for me, Miss Marvel, the pilot. Oh. I only ended up watching the pilot. This, in terms of all the Marvel shows. I read the comic
for this before. Where she gets her powers.
This, in terms of like compared.
And I like the main lady because she's like a real fan of the Marvel series.
Compared to all the other Marvel series, this one really tanks.
What about She-Hulk?
She-Hulk. Well, I never watched She-Hulk.
What about
What If, honestly, was better than Ms. Marvel, I thought.
I don't believe that.
This goes...
I didn't like What If, yeah.
This goes, like, just the complete kids route, which is fine.
But you're not talking about the show as a whole. You're just talking about
I'm just talking about the pilot.
Yes.
Yeah, it goes the whole kids route, which is fine, but, like, it just doesn't feel like there was any... Yes, completely. It honestly made me a little mad at the end. The only part that I remember that was good was actually the end credits scene where the guy from Succession, who was also in the Spider-Man...
But this is just about a girl who gets her powers in a weird way, and her friends are kind of tropey, and...
but it's really boring.
It's really
boring.
Okay, so it's lame. All right. Episode 2 for me is season 4, episode 5 of In the Dark. First episode I've ever seen of the show. Did not do a very good storyline for its main character. She wasn't solving a case in this one. She was actually in the middle of a courtroom trial where she was the one who was having to defend herself. She did have a lawyer, but I think the lawyer was related to a love triangle that she was connected to, and she hooked up with the other guy who wasn't the brother, and that is plot holes. And if you were a fan of that show, maybe it made more sense because I know they brought some people back. Yeah. So, but like if you just jumped into this one, not a good episode, like really bad. So yeah, that's my number 2. What's your number 1? Or sorry, your number 2, yeah.
I remember when we were doing our first best of the year back in April, I said that this was so good that's bad that it couldn't end up on my bottom list, but I rechanged that opinion. Rebelde, the pilot, it's so laughably bad, especially the ending twist where it was like they're all like jamming out and the people that kidnap them or are in a different room are like really agreeing with it and starting to be like, they're pretty good.
It's got good music. It's got... No. I know Netflix has put a lot of production value in this. They're already about to release the second season of it. And having done the research on that show, that exhaustive research, like it took me a really long time. I found out about the Argentine show that started it off. The Chris... what's her name? The person who like created the entire industry of soap operas for teens. This show, even if the show itself might not be great, and what episode are you going after? The pilot?
The pilot, yeah.
Yeah, what it's come from it's legendary. Like, it's crazy. But go listen to that podcast if you haven't heard it. That's a fun one. Yeah. And so for my number one, though, it's fairly recent. I don't think there's recency bias, though, because the first 20 minutes of this are borderline unwatchable. I think I said at the time that they spent more time kissing than talking. And when they do talk, their mouths have to be no further than like 2 inches apart from one another. And it's convenient because the plot has it where once the thing actually picks up a story, it's all about how miscommunication. And yet they're always making out or having sex and stuff. Dangerous Liaisons, episode 1. That's the only one I watched. Only one I will ever watch. It's so bad. Do not watch that episode. I am telling you, unless you are a fan of romance novels. That was my one caveat. If you're a big fan of romance novels, 50 Shades of Grey, like that's your thing, go for it.
But if you're a fan of romance novels, you'll really like the show, is what you're saying.
Probably, yeah. Okay. It's not even based off the Dangerous Liaisons movie or TV show or book or novel. Yeah, like it's not based on that. It's like based off a love letter that the show creator. Like I remember you telling me that, and it's not worth your time. Go ahead.
Number 1 on my list was 911 Season 6, Episode 7.
That's the Fox show. You really don't like network shows.
I mean, no, but again, this made East New York look amazing.
But I remember how you described this episode, and it was at least entertaining in a way, because like all the ones I've said have really been boring. But this one, like you kept on describing some crazy plot that they tried to sell as real.
Yes, that's the biggest problem with it. If this was maybe a satire television show, it would have done a great job.
But it was all about like voodoo and like this lady.
It was like a rabbit. Basically, there was this bracelet that was like a rabbit's foot. If you lost it, you ended up having all this terrible stuff happen to you. And she almost dies, and she should have died like 5 times in this episode. And she keeps meeting the same the same firefighters that are trying to save her. Sure. There's a weird NoFap storyline, which wasn't just for this episode. It was
a sperm donation storyline.
Yeah, which like apparently lasts multiple episodes, that story arc. I mean, this was just...
Apparently people don't like what they've done to that character, because apparently he's been pretty cool up until then, and then they just kind of like started writing him in a weird way.
Yeah.
I forgot what his name was.
And randomly, much like East New York, it ends with a phone call with this like a random firefighter that's having to like speak to his wife who he doesn't want to meet to. It's just, it's awful. And
so that's the worst episode that you watched.
Yes. The reason why it's not on my shows list, though, is because I do think, it couldn't have lasted 6 seasons without, like, having really good storylines. But this episode in and of itself was just, I feel like, a really bad one to watch. Yeah, so number 1 on my list.
All right, so do you want to start with the bottom 5 shows, or do you want to do our top 5 shows?
Bottom 5 shows.
Okay, bottom 5 shows. Number 5, The Winchesters.
Oh, wow.
This graduated from being... bottom 5 episodes that I watched, because usually I wouldn't put a bottom 5 show when I've only seen one episode of it. However, when I thought about it, it became really apparent how truly nuts the whole premise is. So Supernatural went off the rails. Like even the fans can admit to that, like a long time before it ended. It was a show for fan service, and that's fine, you know? Mm-hmm. And it retconned its own familial backstory several times in the show, in Supernatural. However, this whole series, The Winchesters, feels like a giant desperate plea to get one of their spinoffs to work. Because I know they tried this while Supernatural was running to just do all these what were they called? Backdoor pilots.
Backdoor pilots, yeah.
Yes, and they all failed. But this somehow did get greenlit. You have Mary and John, the parents of Sam and Dean, and they have these random friends who are never mentioned in the original show, and they're a bunch of young monster slayers also living the dorm life. And just the attempt, they didn't even attempt to make the characters look like themselves or act like themselves. It feels so cash grabby. So the whole show, I was able to say from this one episode, I can tell this is a wasted show. I don't like it. Bottom 5.
What you said about the Winchesters being one episode and ending up on your bottom 5 shows, I'm looking at my bottom 5 list, and these are all based off of one episode.
That's fine. No, that was just my own personal rule.
Number 5, I already mentioned it before, but honestly, I felt it was so bad that I should end up on this list. Rebelde. So comically bad.
I'm never going to agree with that. It's just because it represents almost like Skins to me. It was the beginning of the Avengers. It spun off into every different country. It made people in like Israel pay attention to people in Brazil and like learn a different language. It's crazy.
I mean, it's just
they started up bands that would like tour across the countries. It's such a cool like thing.
Yeah, look, I can understand how like you doing the research for it and seeing all this history would probably have.
It can't possibly be that bad.
Yes, it is.
It's like High School Musical in the music that they're using. At least you get to enjoy that.
I will say the music song that they have at the end is catchy, but again, the people that kidnap them, and there's this whole entire fire storyline that like that's how they end the episode.
But you're going back after the episode. You're not going after the show.
Yeah, well, it's just the characters are so hard to root for. They play it's like the dumbest payoffs that you can possibly imagine. Rebelde, number 5. I can't.
Yeah. Number 4 on my list is Man vs. Bee. I just wanted Mr. Bean. This was a slapstick, but the punchlines were not there. This is a man trying to kill a bee for 9 episodes. 9 episodes.
I could probably get pretty tired.
So, yeah, that's 9. Number 4.
Okay. Number 4 for me is Elite. So this is the second, kind of teenage soap opera.
Sure.
I remember I said that the first...
But Elite, I understand, because it's like by the 5th season, they started doing some really wacky things.
Yeah.
They lost a lot of the original cast.
Yeah, no Rio or Denver was incredibly sad to see that, because that's what I was kind of banking on for being good.
From Money Heist.
Money Heist, yeah. And its first few minutes were actually interesting, because you see the dead body and you're wondering exactly who did it. But after a certain while, the show just gets really hard to watch, because I didn't care about any of the characters. I didn't care about what they did, and I feel like it was that way for most of season 5.
I think you represent most of the audience with that take, but I do know it got renewed for another season, which I do find funny. Number 3 on my list, I gave 3 top episodes to Apple shows. However, not all of Apple shows are winners. This one, Surface, was probably one of the worst of the year. That's why I'm putting it in my number 3 spot. It's a woman who had amnesia and and wakes up and finds out that she wasn't the upstanding figure that she thought that she was. She was having an affair. It was a waste of the guy who plays Luke in Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah.
And it didn't make any sense. Like, there were a lot of plot holes. I ended up watching 3 episodes of it, and it was a snore fest. That's my number 3 is Surface. Yeah.
So number 3 on my list is a Netflix show. It's not the only time you'll see Netflix on my bottom list, but I'm all for them shooting in South Africa. However, the Brave ones.
Oh, it's got like a 3 on IMDb.
Oh my God, the storylines made literally no sense. Like all the shows I have on here, at least the storylines I could like somewhat follow. I could not follow it because the characters made no sense. The ending where both characters decided to die.
There is a bad thing that's going on with your bottoms, though, is that they're all foreign. Like, you haven't. Yeah.
Oh, well, that'll change when we get higher in the list.
I hope so, because it would be sad if like only the subtitled ones you were just...
No. Believe me, that'll change when we get to the top of the list. But yeah, this just like number 3, because it needed a serious rewrite. Again, I was all for them shooting in South Africa. We usually don't see that in a lot of different TV shows. Sure. But here, it was just like the fact that the storyline, I felt like that was the main driving point as to why it was made.
I think they were just... Netflix was trying to start something like that. There is a huge... I think in Nigeria, there's a big movie market and stuff, and they're just what's it called? It's Nollywood or something.
Nollywood, yeah.
So maybe they're just trying to tune into that, and they just didn't get it.
Here, it also looked really cheap. They didn't even bother to make one of the main characters to give him a name. They just said Man, the main character, the boyfriend of the main character. They just titled him as Man. I remember it was just I felt really lazy.
Man might just be his name. All right,
I'm just gonna number 3.
Okay, my number 2. This is actually a perfectly good show. This show,
it's on your bottom shows.
Yes, this show wins the Thanks I Hate It award. It's produced well. The cast is great. The story is just disgusting. And you couldn't make me watch another episode if you paid me. A Friend in the Family. I got like goosebumps watching this because of how much I hated seeing what this one dude, and this is based on a true story, which is so much worse, did to this poor family. And specifically this poor kid.
But isn't that the reaction you're supposed to have?
Yes, but they did it too well. Or maybe they just like overdid it. I don't know. The point is there's a time jump that happens, and I didn't even get to that point. But the fact that whatever he's doing, I'm not going to get into it too much, is hurting this family for as long as the time jump happens. Like they cast the characters 10 years later or something, is repulsive and I wanted to punch him. Like, even just thinking about it now, it's like Jake Lacey. I will never look at him the same. Yeah, he's just a monster. But yeah, that's my number 2.
Number 2 for me was Bel-Air. Bel-Air, I'll give it this. It was incredibly different.
Don't say it was, because it was also renewed.
Different in all the wrong ways. I said before, I don't know how they're going to make a season 2, especially now. But I mean, like,
it's just taking what used to be a comedy, a Will Smith comedy, now making it a very comedy. Dark.
This is an unintentional comedy.
Yeah, then they make what's his brother's name?
Carlton.
Yeah, then they make Carlton.
My favorite character, everyone's favorite character from the original. You make him a crack addict. You make him like the most hateable.
I don't think he was a crack addict. I think he was like on Adderall.
He did ecstasy. Right? They make a joke about it. Yeah, but he's like snorting ecstasy. He's just someone who absolutely hates Will Smith.
Huh.
Yeah, just
I think it's more the dynamic there that you don't like to see. It's like, I want to see these two get along.
The first 15 minutes of this was a basketball game, and then when like the thugs end up losing the basketball game because Will Smith is playing in it, Will Smith takes out his friend's gun and almost shoots the main bad guy. And when you compare that to the original, which got it done way faster and like a title sequence, and it's like that's the one little fight that Will Smith is talking about here. He's about to shoot the bad guy. What were they thinking? This should never have been made.
In short, you're saying this was just a bad year for Will Smith.
Yeah.
All right, last on my list, and then we'll be able to talk about optimistic, happy stuff again, is my least favorite show of this year. And this would have been on my best shows list for the last 2 years.
Oh,
no. Probably. It would have been in contention at least last year. Definitely on it 2 years ago. I'm devastated because of probably my favorite show turning into a smoldering pile of toxic garbage. We kind of addressed it when we did the episode. The storylines are now bad. The plot holes are enormous. But most importantly to this show, you really can't figure it out. The characters have been bastardized to a point of complete insanity.
Westworld?
And no, Westworld I could do with. I was already sold off of Westworld after season 2, and I was actually okay with it because I kind of just re-identified that the show was going to be following Dolores' character.
Okay.
This show here, there's nothing familiar about it anymore, and it's For All Mankind.
Oh.
So yeah,
For All Mankind, number 1. I mean,
this was hard to watch. Like, I knew I was going to watch all the episodes because I just had that much invested. I was like, I'm riding with it till the end. I know it's been renewed. I will have to reevaluate that before I jump back into it.
So you're not sold on watching season 4 now?
No, I will continue to watch it. I just don't want to tell myself that I will because it's torture. And I really like the last maybe 5 minutes where they kind of go off script and they start doing this like little sciencey thingy. It had nothing to do with the actual plot of the show. The actual plot of the show is a stinky pile of trash, like I said, and everybody should never watch that season again.
I think that when it comes to like our ratings, I remember they were completely different. I gave the season 3 episode 1 an 8, and I think that you gave it a 5.
Oh, I saw it clearly. I knew what it was, and I was right. Like, if there was an award for it, I was completely right about this show and where it's going. It was not heading in the right direction, and I knew it.
I will say this. I saw the first 2 seasons, and even after I saw the episode premiere, I didn't really feel like I needed to watch season 3. I was just kind of done. So
Danny. And not even Danny and his brother. Okay. So I just. Oh yeah, you're number 1. Of course. Sorry, I got so like lost in sadness and depression just thinking about that.
Number 1 on my list made me sad as well. They had all the ingredients. They even had the rule book. They had the name, but man, did this fail. Blockbuster. Oh. How awful this TV show was.
That was a little destined to fail though, because it was made by Netflix, so you knew that they were going to try to be like.
It could have worked. It could have worked if they didn't go this like lame, almost Peacock like route with it, and like it was just awful. I mean, the story, the characters, the acting, I didn't care about any of it.
Yeah, I think you need to be a little bit more specific. So they brought in Randall Park, right?
Yeah, Randall Park to be the main actor.
And so you're thinking, well, this is going to be a great comedy.
They also brought in the guy from American Vandal as well. The woman
JB
from
Smoove.
Yes, JB Smoove, who I was really excited to see did a terrible job here.
And
didn't look like he wanted to be
think,
there.
well, this could be a really cutting, sarcastic show, but at the same time, throw us back in nostalgia times.
Right.
I think I said this during the podcast that the biggest mistake they did was that they didn't center it around like 90s Blockbuster or early 2000s.
They barely centered it around Blockbuster.
they centered it around modern day Blockbuster, as if there's still one, and they said, well, we're going to make the show about that one today, as opposed to making it when it was like the biggest deal. They could make something really cool where everybody was like, oh, I remember doing that. But it's...
I know. Blockbuster wasn't even a main part of the storyline.
It was a romance.
It was a romance, just like terrible characters, awfully written. I said that it doesn't seem like the cast even wanted to be there, some of them. JB Smoove, it looked like he was hurting when he was doing it.
What?
It looked like...
Smoove looks the same in everything.
No, it looked like he didn't want to be there.
Really?
I could tell. I was looking like really into that scene, just, awful.
Does he look like he wants to be there in Harley Quinn? When he's a plant.
I like him in Harley Quinn.
How about those commercials with Eli Manning?
No, I think that he looks like he's enjoying himself in the Eli Manning.
He looks like he's enjoying himself in Blockbuster. I think you're just clouded by how much you dislike the show otherwise. All right.
Probably.
So now our top shows. Ready?
Yes.
Number 5. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. This is actually the most shocking pick on my list because I did not think it was going to somehow make it, but I really thought about it, and I like the rest of the series as well. I put on Peacemaker. Peacemaker is now my number 5 spot. Yeah, no, I mean, like, John Cena does a great job. Completely changed my opinion of him from the movies. He's such a likable presence there. He makes this show what it is, no question about it.
And the special effects are great. It did feel like you were just watching, like, a sequel to Suicide Squad almost.
No, James Gunn did a great job here, and Peacemaker, surprisingly, made it on my list, number 5.
And even with the drama behind recasting Vigilante, that didn't seem to play too much. And Eagly's still my favorite character, or one of my favorite sidekicks that I've seen in any show. Number 5 for me is Under the Banner of Heaven. I watched the series after reviewing the premiere episode, and it's a tragic story. It's well acted. It's legitimately but justifiably creepy, unlike what was the show that I just talked about? A Friend in the Family. I could have done with a little less flashbacks to like the prior century when they were trying to give but I was happy that they did sort of an intense investigation that wasn't afraid to poke at the extreme sectors of Mormonism, because I think that was interesting to watch, especially I'm sure what's his face's
Andrew
performance.
Garfield. Like he does not do TV shows ever, so I'm sure seeing his presence there was probably pretty good.
Yeah, he was cool.
Number 4 for me was another DC series. I didn't even realize that until just now, but Harley Quinn. I don't think I addressed as much as I wanted to in the
we had a whole season to go through, so it would be hard to.
No, I mean, like, this show is not afraid to take all these different characters that you know from either comic books, films, anything, and just like throw them in and make them the most obnoxious characters.
Well, they like to take in superheroes that are like barely even talked about from the comics, right? So there's like random people showing up, but then they also take big ones like Batman, and then they do something really
yes, all the different traits, and that's definitely by far the best part of the show. But the humor, especially this season, like seasons 1 and 2 were good, but season 3 really showed, I feel like, its strength. I love the Joker. The Joker is my favorite character of the whole series, but even the main crew, like people I found originally annoying, such as like Clayface, he's really starting to grow on me as well. I found that the storyline also, the emotional beats worked a lot better. And you know what, even the Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn, them being together, which I did not like in season 2, that storyline started to grow on me as well. And
I feel like that's the entire point of the show.
It's not, it's not afraid to be violent. It's not afraid to be adult as it wants to. Maybe a little too kid friendly at times, actually, with
trying to appeal to everything.
The moral message. But you know what? Overall, I was like, yes, this deserves to be on my top shows list.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes, since the showrunners have now left to do other things and they've like put someone else in their place.
Gets me a little worried.
Yeah, but there's a holiday special or a Valentine's Day special that's coming up pretty soon for it. My number 4, we reviewed the first episode, and I expected from that first episode that the rest of the show would be just classic Nathan For You. Of course, I'm talking about the rehearsal.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that episode alone was pretty good.
Yes.
But like once you see the whole show and you realize like how trippy and crazy it gets, I've read a lot of people who were like more blown away with the ending than I was, but it still deserves to be one of the top 4 talked about shows, best shows of 2022. The dude is like, it has you questioning like, what does he actually believe? Who is this guy? Is he an alien?
It seems like he barely breaks character. Like, I mean, like, he can't believe.
He's not like Aubrey Plaza, where she, like, you can definitely tell that a lot of it is a character. With him, it's like, where does it end? Where are you? Yeah. But yeah, number 3 for you.
Number 3, Winning Time. I saw the pilot for it as well. I still plan on watching the rest of the series. I mean, I thought that it got me scared because I thought to myself, okay, they're maybe going to like parody The Last Dance a little bit too much. Maybe it's going to remind me too much of that. It did. but in a way that I really enjoyed. And it's not afraid to be, like, kind of avant-garde.
So was it worth breaking up Will Ferrell's and Adam McKay's friendship for?
I mean,
is that a worthy cost? They sacrificed that to make a good show?
Look, Adam McKay made a really, really good show at the winning time. That's all I'll say about it. And also, it has an A-list cast. Adrian Brody, I think, was my favorite character from the thing. Yeah, no, really great TV series.
Yeah, okay. I just remember the tweet we put out with Adrian Brody's thing on the roof. Didn't you, like, have a little moment there? Yeah, all right. So my third show was also part of my episodes. It's Pachinko. The only reason it's not 1 or 2 probably is because I haven't actually finished this show yet. That's how good it is that I know that it's going to be one of the top 3 best shows. I've seen about 4 or 5 episodes at this point, and it's a feat. Even the sounds are great. I remember I went off about the sounds and how Apple had did really well with those. And again, credit to them for making it to begin with. So that's my number 3.
You know, it's funny you say that about Pachinko with, like, it's going to be good, because I have the same feeling with my number 2 pick here. In fact, I feel like...
Bel-Air. Oh, wait, no, that's the wrong one.
No, The Bear. I feel like this has the potential to actually be number 1. Like, if I were to watch the rest of the series. Jeremy Allen White does a great job. I mean, like, he's exceptional on this. But you have some fun guest spots as well. It has a perfect blend of being incredibly hectic. I said, like, uncut gems in the podcast. But it's also dark, fun, and most of all, the thing I like most about it, it's witty. All the, like, dialogue.
And gritty. Witty and gritty.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's very, very snappy as well. This, like, if it wasn't for my number 1 pick, would absolutely be number 1.
You said that it reminded you of actually working at a restaurant.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, but, like... even that times tenfold because of, like, all of, like, almost the verbal abuse that you see that, like, all of them have to go through. I know there's one episode in particular where, like, their restaurant gets a C and they're having to, like, redo everything. Just overall, great series.
All right, yeah. I think that people would agree with that. And then my number 2, this is probably up there because I had such low expectations. I honestly thought it could be one of the worst shows just going into it, because I didn't know anything about it. It looks really cheaply made. And then I just watched it, and it was funny, and it was stupid, but it was like, it just continued to grow on you, and the characters did too. And the comedy just sneaks up on you after a while. It's lowbrow humor, but then it's just woven really well. This Fool. And I watched the full season for it. Very unique character. The way I would describe it is, it's always sunny characters, people who are irredeemable almost, but, like, they actually are good people in this. Like, they actually have souls and morals, and they do really bad things, but, like, you can tell it actually, they do them for the right reasons. Mm-hmm. So it's weird. Yeah, so This Fool, number 2.
I remember, I think Fred Armisen makes an appearance in the finale or something, right?
Yeah, good comedy.
So number 1 for me, and it kind of stayed number 1 ever since I watched it. Nothing really came close except for maybe The Bear. It was The Offer. The Offer, I don't understand.
There's been a polarized, like, tension
I do not understand the Rotten Tomato score for this thing.
Okay, so I can explain that. A lot of people aren't like The Godfather.
Yeah.
But they're not obsessed with it. And so they don't necessarily appreciate a movie a full show that's oriented about just the making of The Godfather.
I mean, I agree more with the IMDb rating, which has it in the top 250. This has everything. I mean, you have an A-list.
It's a lot of Hollywood patting itself on the back, though. And so people sometimes get sick of that.
I don't care. I mean, it has
But you're really into film. So.
Yeah, it has an A-list cast. I mean, the story is so intriguing to me. I know things about The Godfather. In fact, I had to watch The Godfather for this episode, which, again, was a great thing. But, like, seeing it actually played out on screen was great. It has great cinematography. This thing looks like a movie. And there's this weird thing that's happening now, because Why Women Kill was the 202nd podcast that we did. The Offer was my 306 podcast. Sure. So at the very beginning of, like, every single 100. So maybe the next one's going to be at the beginning of the 400. But still, before we get there, Offer number 1 on my list. Absolutely.
Awesome. And at this point, people are probably wondering, if they haven't checked out the list, which they should have done, why we aren't talking about, like, things like Better Call Saul, Ozark, The White Lotus. And those are shows that either we've done before this, which we can't then talk about for this year, or we didn't get to them. With Ozark specifically, you haven't seen any of the series, and jumping into a random episode would have felt really bad. Because
I saw the pilot, but I would have missed the
opportunity of and that's also the same for Better Call Saul. The White Lotus we already did beforehand. The one show that I've seen talked about a lot is We Own This City, and that one I would have loved to do, and we just missed that one.
Yeah, so, we missed also Euphoria and Our Flag Means Death, which were two that
we'll get to some other time.
At some point.
But like the point is that if you haven't heard the show, there's a good possibility that's the reason why. And we still have our little awards to go through at the end of this. But my top show of the year, my favorite, and I think a lot of people's, is Severance. And we reviewed episode 3, and at that point, I didn't know whether or not the show was going to give you the payoff. You knew it was good. The setup was good. The good characters and mysterious, very mysterious about what's going on. A lot of theories floating around, and you're just like, will this pay off? You have Ben Stiller in the background doing his thing, and the penultimate episode probably puts the show in the top 5 shows of the year. But the cliffhanger at the end of the entire series,
the finale,
in the entire first season, throws the whole show into the stratosphere to me. I think it's by far, it answers almost all your questions. Thank you for providing answers to a sci-fi series that asks a lot of questions. This is kind of like a first since maybe Westworld season 1, where it all came around in the end and you felt like you knew almost as much going in. And you felt like actually satisfied and not like, oh, well, they're just stringing me along and along and along.
And I think the good thing about the show is that it provides setup, but it's not just like boring setup just to get to like answers later on. It's like, no, you're invested throughout the whole entire way.
I'm doing everything I can to tiptoe around it, but to tiptoe around giving away any details about it in the hopes that anybody who hasn't watched it will go and check it out. But there was one other thing I wanted to say. But I've seen it twice now, and you even catch things, even though it feels maybe sometimes boring, you are actually catching things on the second go around that like you wouldn't expect.
No, I agree. Severance was great. Yeah.
Okay, so there were a couple ones that I am shocked that weren't on your thing. There were ones that I was hoping that you would get to, and you did. Money Heist Korea, Blockbuster. Mm-hmm. One that you should have gotten to that I'm really judging.
I know which one it's going to be because but I will address that later on. It's Resident Evil. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I know. Should have made something. And then Andor, I feel like could have possibly been in your top ones. Peacemaker, you did actually get to. Players, which I thought was underrated. But we're going to jump into our awards now. And the first award that we have was the What Were We Thinking award, which is the episode that if you look at our ratings that we ourselves look at and think, what happened there?
Yeah.
Like, it'd be really funny if it was like a really current episode. Like if I said that about Echo 3 and it was like a week ago. No, it's probably going to be one from a while back. And there's probably a reason for it. So like IMDb likes to do a structure where it has a bell curve with ratings where most of shows that are even like mediocre are going to fall in the 7 range, like a C, you know, but instead of a 5 range. And about, 3 months into the year, I was like, this is ridiculous. Let's start like trying to move it towards being more critical and move that rating more to a 5.
I was giving a lot of things 7s.
Yeah, you were giving a lot of things 7s. And so I think it skewed it a little bit. But when I look back and I see that I gave The Thing About Pam a 7, the same rating that I gave Shining Girls, the same rating that I gave Welcome to Wrexham, and the same rating that I gave Shantaram, which are all 10 times better than The Thing About Pam.
I don't even remember you giving it a 7 because I remember how much you were kind of against it.
I felt like I was. So I don't understand that either. It's weird. But yeah, that's my double take. So yours.
My double take, and I kind of realized it later on. Last Days of Ptolemy Gray. I still think that Samuel L. Jackson is a great actor and he gives a fantastic performance really here. That. But an 8.5, especially for kind of a slow story, especially like when the show is just like so taxing and long to watch and definitely boring at points. That was such a high rating to give it. So and I was thinking about it when we were doing our best shows back in April. I was like, should I put Last Days of Ptolemy Gray on there? And I was really, really looking hard, and I was like, no. And I really probably shouldn't have been as given it as high a score as I did.
But you never finished the series,
no.
Right?
And I probably won't, honestly.
I just remember Samuel L. Jackson actually bought the rights, I think, to the story to actually be able to perform in it. I don't know.
I think, no, the show is still good, but definitely not an 8.5.
Hey, yeah, okay. The next award that we're giving is the They Did What award, which was the most surprising renewal / cancellation. I'm saying for cancellations, Westworld and Paper Girls. Westworld, I think people have talked everybody's ears off. Like it's crazy that it got canceled right before it was about to have its like final seasons anyway. But Paper Girls felt like Utopia, where it was setting up for like a wider, longer lifespan on Amazon, right? That's where it was out, and it just got canceled right at the start. And the renewal that I was shocked by was actually the first show that was of the year, the Clean Lady. Yes, I gave that a bad review because the pilot just seemed super tacky. And I don't know why it got renewed unless it got significantly better.
I only have a surprising renewal here, and it's I Am Groot, because why? Why do they feel the need to do, like it was so short anyways. I hope it doesn't get to the point where it just becomes really annoying.
You're positive that I Am Groot got renewed?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's shocking. Like, yeah, I second I must have missed that. That's crazy. Because most of the time they come off with these one-off things and like,
you would think that'd be it. Yeah.
Interesting. The next award is the What Were They Thinking award. That's where the sentiment, audience, or critical is much more divergent than our own.
We still agree with our rating, but others don't.
Yeah. Or just straight up like, what were they thinking making the show? It can be either way. You can interpret it however you want. For me, it's like compare the series that I'm about to bring up to MacGyver, which was brought back because of nostalgia, but they didn't bring back Richard Dean Anderson. He retired. That makes sense in a way. The show still was arguably not that good, but with this show, it didn't make any sense to me. Quantum Leap, first, A, make it good if you're going to bring it back. And I don't think that many places have said that this is particularly good. But B, make sure that you've got like at least Scott Bakula on board to make a cameo. He's still very active in the television world. Yeah. And like the idea that he would be open to something like this, and yet you make it in a way that he doesn't want to be a part of it. There's something wrong there. And what were they thinking?
I mean, so many fans were. That's what they wanted. Scott Bakula back, and they couldn't even do it. Here, this show got critical acclaim, and I was saying I was looking at best of TV shows, and this was landing on lists. But the Dropout, I mean, like, I know apparently it was really, really good, but I just gave it a low score because
so did I. Yeah.
I don't really see like the point in doing it.
Theranos, I feel like that story's been told, but because it is still in the atmosphere, like Elizabeth Holmes just got sentenced, I think, to a certain amount of time. I mean, maybe the acting just turns out to be really good. It
actually has made me kind of think to go back and
check it out.
Watch the rest of the series. But
less about what were they thinking and what's going on there.
Yeah.
All right. This next award is called the I Was Wrong Award. It's for a show that we've misjudged or mispredicted. Moonhaven came to mind. She-Hulk. I know that the audience reception of that has not been great, and I gave it a pretty positive review in the first episode. But I will actually give this award to Suspicion, because I finished that show, and it ended up being pretty lame, and with a bad twist, and I expected it to be good. So, I was completely off with that one. I would not recommend it to people. The other show I want to mention here, though, is Game of Thrones. I ended up watching the full series to that, the House of the Dragon, of course. And I remember the first pilot episode, I was pretty critical of it because I was very skeptical that anything post season 5 of Game of Thrones in that universe was ever going to be good again. And actually, I think by episode 3 of the Game of Thrones House of the Dragon series, I was sold. I was back on board. And I thought they did a really good episode there, and I also thought the rest of the series came together really well. I can't wait for the next season, which isn't going to be until 2024 though.
I was surprised how many people, I knew it was going to be a big show, but I was surprised how many people were willing to give it a chance. And then it seemed like somehow, it actually exceeded some people's expectations, and it turned out to be a pretty good show. I'm still watching it.
You're still going through it.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree. No,
what was the I was a wrong for you?
Resident Evil. I can justify why I gave it a 6. I was trying to be as gracious as I could because I was like,
it was awful.
I was really trying to like see if there was any redeeming factor, but in the end, when it comes down to it all, I really shouldn't have. It did not deserve a 6. I think that the biggest problem with the show is just
it just didn't deserve.
It's just the writing.
The writing's bad. It gets goofy.
Yeah.
No, goofy by the end of the series. I read what happens later on, and it just gets goofy. So it's if you're looking for something so bad it's good, that might be the one to go into. But also, if you're a fan of the games or any sort of the lore there, you're not gonna like it. Okay, The Underdog. This one I really wish had made one of your lists because it truly deserves to be talked about more. This show is it's just been picked up by TNT. It was actually produced in a different country, but it will be airing worldwide, or at least in the U.S. for the first time.
The Lazarus
Project. I watched that full series. It's the best sci-fi. It's one of the best sci-fi shows of the year.
It has high stakes. It's action-packed. The underdog award for me was the Lazarus Project.
Yeah.
And it seemed like it was following
I'm
a
going
complex
off script
story.
by saying I was taking your show to put it there because, I'm glad that you are saying that. But you didn't. Did you see the full show?
No, I only saw the one episode. But the one episode I saw dealt with the end of the world. And I was like, what?
I know. Watch the Lazarus Project. It's got the guy from Wakefield in it. It's got the guy from Strike, right? Is that the name of the show? The Strike? It's got the guy from I May Destroy You. A lot of talent there. Our next and one of our final awards goes to the backstory. That's what it's called. It's where we do research for every single show. So one of the shows that we did research, whichever one really stood out as like, this is, if you ever have to talk about something, has its own story behind it.
Yeah.
I've got three different contestants.
I have 4.
3 different contestants for me were Lost Ollie, the William Joyce story, and how that's what it was based off of. And if you read about William Joyce, he's done amazing stuff. He was actually one of the workers on the original Toy Story. And then Shannon Tyndall, who actually created the series, he actually replied to our tweet, gave us a little more information on one of the questions we had, and also learning about Walter Tevis and Man Who Fell to Earth. I know that series got canceled, but the history behind it, the fact that there was a musical made on it, how David Bowie got cast, like that type of stuff, it's crazy. But the one that I do have 4, just like you. The Rebelde.
Yeah, I knew that was going to show up.
Rebelde is just it's a 20-minute conversation to be had, and it could be my number 1. Dark Winds, I actually read the books that this first season was based off of. Tony Hillerman's work has been done several times.
I'm glad you mentioned Dark Winds. I remember the day after you posted it, because you posted it that night, I had COVID.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we even tried to do God's Favorite Idiot in different places, if you remember that. And the Players podcast, we did 2 different times, and
yeah, because the recording got botched.
Yeah. For me, the best show to do research on, my 4 were Severance, Irma Vep, Smiling Friends, and Paper Girls. Severance, Irma Vep, I had to watch the Irma Vep film for, and Severance, I remember to get kind of in the mood for it, I watched Office Space for the first time, and I just did a lot of research for those. Paper Girls, I read the whole entire comic series. Actually, it wasn't too bad. Especially the
Paper
ending
Girls
comics.
like Miss Marvel, where I read the first edition or whatever it's called.
Yeah, I think there was 30 issues for Paper Girls. And again, I was surprised at how good it was. But the number 1 show that I found the most fun to research for was Smiling Friends. I remember wanting to do this when I saw the picture for it, when we were talking about which shows we were going to pick.
Sure.
Because I knew that there was, just from the still of it, I was there's a story behind this. And yeah, the fact that it was made by YouTubers and all the different stuff I learned gave me a newfound respect for the show, and it honestly seems like the biggest shows from Adult Swim since Rick and Morty.
It's the only Adult Swim show we did this last year. Next year, the coming year, there's going to be some new shows. There's The Last of Us. I'm looking forward to that one. The Secret Invasion show. There's a Band of Brothers Pacific sequel that's going to come out too. Yes. Okay. But that all paves the way for our final award, which is the most forgettable show. And I would have to give this... Well, actually, you go first.
I would give it to the Essex Serpent, because I remember I liked it, but I do not remember anything about it. I only remember Tom Hiddleston and Claire Danes were in it, and I do not remember anything about the story.
Well, I know a podcast you can listen to find out about it. For me, this was a clear winner. It was definitely Sedention. We watched 2 seasons of it, talked about it for an hour. And
Sedention?
Yeah, Sedention. Yeah, see? Yep, that's the response.
Okay, so that's obviously not a show that we did.
Yes, it is.
Sedention?
Yeah, Sedention. It was about something.
I do have a biggest letdown, actually. Category for me.
All right, before we close it.
Yeah, actually, Welcome to Wrexham. I was expecting from the trailer and from just the interesting subject matter, also star power behind it, to be better than it was. I gave it a 6. I still stand by it, but I was really hoping for more.
I think you got to watch the full series to get the full effect of it. I know that they're coming out with another season because they've made it postseason. They still are actively engaged. Ryan Reynolds and what's his face are still actively engaged with that team. All right. Well, that'll do it for this year's review.
We'll see you on the next episode where we'll be back to doing our normal podcast. Thanks for listening. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.